All right, let's talk about something that's totally changing the game for how we build apps. It's called serverless architecture. Now, just imagine for a sec, what if you could just focus on writing amazing code for your product and never, ever have to worry about the servers it runs on? Sounds like a dream, right? Well, let's dig in and see how it's actually possible.
And listen, this isn't some pie-in-the-sky futuristic tech we're talking about. Nope. A massive 40% of companies are already using serverless. I mean, think about that. It's happening right now under our noses, and it is completely flipping the script on what it means to be a developer.
Okay, so to really get why serverless is such a big deal, we got to go back and talk about the old way of doing things, the problem it's built to solve. For, like, ever, if you wanted to get an app out into the world, you had to deal with servers. And man, that was a headache, a huge one. And the thing is, these weren't just little annoyances. They stacked up. You were literally paying for servers to just sit there doing nothing. Then, bam, a sudden flood of users and your whole site goes down. And all that time you spend setting things up, patching security holes, and just keeping the lights on, that was time you weren't spending on building the cool stuff your users actually wanted. It was just a total drain on creativity, time, and of course, money.
This is probably the best way to think about it. The old way, traditional hosting, that's like owning a car. You're on the hook for everything. The car payment, the insurance, the gas, the maintenance. Even when it's just parked in your garage, you're paying for it. But serverless, that's like calling an Uber or a Lyft. You just say, hey, I need a ride, and a car appears. You only pay for that specific trip, and you don't have to think twice about the engine, the tires, or the oil changes. Someone else handles all of that.
Okay, the ride-sharing thing makes a ton of sense, but let's get a little more technical. What is serverless really?
All right, and this is the first question everyone asks. If it's serverless, where in the world does the code actually run? Does it just float around in the cloud on magic pixie dust?
Of course not. The truth is, the name serverless is probably one of the worst named technologies ever. It's a total misnomer. There are still servers. Tons of them, actually. The key difference is, you don't have to manage them. You don't even have to see them. The cloud provider, your AWS, your Google Cloud, whoever, they take care of all that stuff in the background.
So, if we're going to put a textbook definition on it, here it is. It's all about the cloud provider dynamically handling the servers for you. The big shift in thinking is this. Your app isn't just sitting there running all day, every day on a machine. Instead, it literally springs to life only when it's needed, does its job, and then, poof, it's gone.
And this chart really helps visualize where serverless fits into the whole cloud picture. You start with infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, where you still manage a lot. Then you move to platform as a service, PaaS, where a bit more is handled for you. But then you get to FaaS, functions as a service, which is the engine of serverless. Look at that last row. What do you manage? Just your code. That's it. Everything else, the servers, the storage, the operating system, it's all someone else's problem. It's the ultimate let me just write my code model.
And yeah, FaaS really is the heart and soul of this whole thing. The core idea is that you stop thinking about one giant monolithic application. Instead, you break it down into these tiny independent functions. One function might resize an image. Another might process a payment. Each one does just one job, and it only wakes up and runs when something specific, an event, triggers it. Like, say, a user hitting the buy button.
Okay, so you're buying into this new way of building things. What's the payoff? What are the superpowers you get that have so many companies jumping on board?
Well, the benefits are huge, and they hit on all those pain points we talked about earlier. First, the cost. It just drops because you're not paying for idle time anymore. You pay only for the split seconds your code is actually running. Then there's scalability. It's just automatic. You don't have to plan for it. One user or 10 million users, the system just handles it. And for developers, this is the best part. You get to just code. You can push out new features faster, try out new ideas, and you never, I mean never, have to get that 3 a.m. page because a server went down. It's liberating.
All right, theory is great, but let's get down to brass tacks. How does this actually work? What's the journey for a piece of code from a developer's machine into this magical serverless world?
It's actually a pretty simple and elegant flow. Step 1, you, the developer, write a small piece of code, a function. Step 2, you upload it to the cloud platform. It just sits there, waiting. Step 3, something happens. An event is triggered. Maybe a user uploads a photo. Step 4, the platform instantly grabs your function, spins up a tiny temporary container, and runs your code. Step 5, your code does its thing, resizes the photo, saves it, whatever. And then step 6, and this is key,
The container is completely destroyed. It only existed for that tiny fraction of a second it was needed. No waste.
Now look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like any powerful tool, serverless isn't a silver bullet. It's not the right answer for every problem. So to give you the whole story, we have to talk about the trade-offs, the potential downsides.
Yeah, exactly. It can sound a little too good to be true, right? So what's the catch? What's the kryptonite for this architectural superhero?
Okay, so the biggest one you'll hear about is something called a cold start. Basically, if your function hasn't been used for a bit, there's a tiny delay the first time it gets called again while the system warms it up. Then there's debugging. It can be kind of tricky because instead of one big app, you're now chasing a request through a bunch of tiny separate functions. And here's another thing. These functions have no memory. They're stateless. Once they're done, they forget everything. So if you need to remember who a user is or what's in their shopping cart, you need to use an external database for that.
Let's just zoom in on that cold start idea for a second, because it's important. It's that initial lag you get when a function is woken up from its sleep. Now, for a lot of apps, a few hundred milliseconds is no big deal. Nobody will ever notice. But if you're building, say, a high-frequency trading app, that delay could be a deal breaker. It really is the direct trade-off for not paying for idle servers. You either pay with money to keep things warm, or you pay with a tiny bit of time on that first request.
So at the end of the day, when you strip everything else away, serverless isn't just a new piece of tech. It's a fundamental shift in mindset. It's about shifting your focus from how do I keep the servers running to how do I build the absolute best thing for my users. It's a move from infrastructure management to pure value creation.
And that right there is the key takeaway. The real point of serverless wasn't just to get rid of servers. It was to get rid of the mental overhead of servers. It forces us to ask a really exciting question. What could we invent? What could we create if we took all the time and brain power we used to spend on managing infrastructure and pointed it directly at innovation? That is the true promise.